The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Mary Gilmore. We're going to start with Americans' Waiver on Love for Royalty. Attitudes weighted down by division, political tensions. A red carpet unfurled on the tarmac. Musicians with brass instruments performed God Save the King. Along Pennsylvania Avenue, British flags flapped in the wind. King Charles and Queen Camilla landed in the United States on Monday, April 27th for their 4-day journey commemorating 250 years of American independence from the British monarchy. The visit comes at one of the most fraught times in recent history between the two nations, amid conflict between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer over the Iran war and future of NATO. Through periods of international political tensions, the British royals have been a symbol of the cultural connection between the two nations. This visit, however, has prompted fresh questions about whether they still play that unifying role. As Trump's relationship with the UK has grown complicated, so too have Americans' attitudes toward the British royals. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle split from the family, and the arrest of the king's brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein have polarized the public. The king's visit with a deeply divisive American president, who himself has been compared to a monarch, could further divide Americans about the British royals. Sarah Hamill, a former journalist who covered the royal family, said Americans' perceptions of the monarchy are in the middle of another shift, and Charles' visit could shape where they land. The Trump thing, I think, is just bringing it all into focus, she said. A ruptured relationship. The president's feud with the British government marks the most significant rift between the two countries in decades, but it's far from the first time an American president has railed against the ruler of the British Isles. On January 9, 1776, days after listening to a reading of the Declaration of Independence in Lower Manhattan, George Washington's troops toppled a lead statue of King George III. They melted it down so they could cast 42,000 bullets for use against the king's army. The small act of rebellion represented a symbolic tipping point in the battle for independence. For years leading up to the Revolutionary War, colonists raged against what they viewed as unfair policies implemented by the British Parliament. But many didn't extend their anger toward the king. That view began to rupture as the first shots of the Revolutionary War rang out in Lexington and Concord in 1775. And a year later, Americans resolved to topple the king, metaphorically and literally. The first hint of celebrity. Once Americans became an independent nation, its hatred for the crown turned into intrigue. Thousands gathered on shipping docks and downtown streets across Chicago, Detroit, and Washington in 1860 for a chance to catch a glimpse of Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales. He was the first British royal to visit the United States since its founding. Excitement about the prince's visit transcended social class and political viewpoints. The whole populace seemed to have gathered into this thoroughfare to greet the illustrious visitor, the Detroit Free Press wrote of his arrival to the city. Then President James Buchanan even viewed the visit as a rare chance to bring the nation together as it teetered close to civil war, according to the White House Historical Association. An enduring relationship. A meal of hot dogs later helped forge America's special relationship with Great Britain that has endured since World War II. During the 4-day jaunt to the United States in 1939, King George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, devoured hot dogs and strawberry shortcake at the Hyde Park home of then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. News articles and photos of the casual picnic enamored Americans, transforming their view of the royals as rigid and aristocratic to a more down-to-earth. Then Prince Charles' marriage to Princess Diana in 1981 pushed the British monarchy to the center of pop culture. Called the People's Princess, Diana promoted the more human image of the royals, dancing with John Travolta at a state dinner hosted by President Ronald Reagan at the White House in 1985. Diana merged the worlds of royalty and celebrity. The little kid that ran away. For many Americans, the pomp and circumstance of the royal still holds allure. Elizabeth Alicora, 30, of Pennsylvania, told USA Today she regularly follows news about the royal family and was excited to watch the king's flashy visit. It's such a crazy thing that this family has been born into this role, Alicora said. I think they're doing a really interesting job at blending it to make it fit and relevant in 2026. But a flurry of scandals and family drama in the decades since Diana and Charles' divorce has cracked the storybook image of the monarchy for many Americans. April Stanley, 51, said she once liked the idea of the monarchy acting as a moral guidepost for Britain, but in recent years, the Oklahoma City resident said she has begun believing it is out of touch and has been tarnished by sexual misconduct allegations against the king's brother. My view is wholly negative. I see Trump and King Charles as being two peas in a pod, Stanley said, adding that she doesn't believe Charles has appropriately addressed allegations against Mountbatten Windsor. That disdain, however, doesn't extend toward her feelings about the United States' special relationship with the British people. That's probably going to outlive this particular moment, Stanley said. It is cool that we still get along and they want to congratulate us, the little kid that ran away from home and became successful. Syrians, Haitians fight for a haven. High Court will decide on protected status. Syria was embroiled in a civil war when Adam, a Syrian now in his 40s, came to the United States in 2018 on an academic scholarship. After earning his master's degree, Adham, who asked to be identified by that pseudonym because he fears retaliation from the Trump administration, was allowed to stay in the United States through a humanitarian relief program for people from dangerous countries. Since then, Adham has worked as a pharmacist, grateful for having been given a place to settle and a moment to breathe. So he was stunned last September when the Trump administration abruptly ended the temporary protected status program for about 6,000 Syrians living in the United States, despite the still perilous conditions in his home country. Adham and his wife, who also works in healthcare, had 60 days to leave or face possible deportation. In a matter of weeks, we were facing the prospect of going from legal residents to people hunted by law enforcement, he said. On April 29th, the Supreme Court will review the administration's push to end deportation protections for Syrians and for 350,000 Haitians, including whether the decision to terminate protections for Haitians was racially motivated. The case could affect the future of the entire humanitarian program, which provides legal residency and the ability to work to about 1.3 million immigrants. Ending the program for everyone, immigrants' rights advocates say, would be the largest stripping in the United States history of legal status from people who now have it. Curtailing the temporary protected status program is a significant part of President Donald Trump's crackdown on immigration, which also includes his attempt to limit birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court is already considering that case. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. Trump has referred to the program as a little trick. He has been particularly vocal about ending it for Haitians, a group he has reportedly maligned, including falsely accusing Haitians living in Ohio of eating people's pets. During the 2024 campaign, Trump promised large deportations in Springfield. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, Trump said during a presidential debate. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. Elected officials and others have defended the immigrants in Ohio and elsewhere, saying they have become valuable members of their communities and contribute to the local economy, taking on jobs in healthcare, elder care, and other industries that are hard to fill. Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican, has said the Haitians have helped revive Springfield. Springfield is an industrial city, manufacturing city that was down, DeWine said on CBS News Face the Nation in February. It has been coming back, and frankly, one of the reasons it's coming back is because of the Haitians who are working there. But opponents say that the humanitarian program, which was supposed to be temporary, is being exploited. In practice, what's happened is once TPS has been granted in the past, administrations have always just consistently renewed it. They never terminate, says James Roger, a lawyer with American First Legal, a group supporting Trump's policy priorities. Refuge from war, natural disasters, and other crises. Created in 1990, the program allows the Department of Homeland Security Secretary to protect immigrants already in the United States from being deported to countries experiencing war, natural disasters, and other emergencies. The immigrants, who must pass background checks, are also allowed to work. The protection initially lasts for up to 18 months, but are automatically extended unless the government determines that conditions in the country have sufficiently improved. Since Trump returned to office in 2025, his administration has moved to end protections for immigrants from 13 of the 17 countries that earlier administrations declared unsafe. Renewal deadlines for the remaining 4 countries, including Ukraine, will be triggered in the coming months. Haiti was declared too dangerous after the 2010 earthquake. Haiti was first designated as too dangerous in 2010 because of the devastating earthquake. 2 of the Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett's 7 children were adopted from Haiti, 1 after the earthquake. Barrett told USA Today last year that a previous case involving Haitian immigrants was a good example of how judges must put their feelings aside and not be swayed by things that move you emotionally in situations in which you have very deep empathy. Haiti remains under a national state of emergency, and the State Department warns Americans not to travel the Caribbean country because of civil unrest, limited health care, crime, terrorism, and the risk of kidnapping. Anyone traveling in Haiti or to other countries under the government's highest risk warning are encouraged to leave DNA samples with a doctor and dental records with a family member in case they're needed to identify remains. Claims of decapitated woman dumped in a river. In February, the decapitated bodies of 4 Haitian women deported from the United States several months earlier were found dumped in a river, according to the lawyers for the Haitians. 3 months earlier, then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem had said parts of Haiti were suitable to return to, and allowing Haitians to remain in the United States was no longer in the national interest. The secretary cited the executive order the president signed his first day back in office, titled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, that laid the groundwork for his crackdown on illegal immigration. Ending the program for Haitians, Noem also said, reflects a necessary and strategic vote of confidence in that nation's future. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. Noam, who was fired in March, reached a similar conclusion about Syria, which is also subject to the State Department's highest level travel warning. Though some sporadic and episodic violence occurs in Syria, she concluded, the situation no longer meets the criteria for an ongoing armed conflict that poses a serious threat to the personal safety of returning Syrian nationals. The United Nations estimated that more than 1.2 million Syrians have returned to their home country since the regime of Bashar al-Assad fell in 2024, according to the Justice Department. Court challenges and terminations blocked by judges. Over the past year, Syrians and Haitians have challenged the terminations, and judges have blocked them from taking effect while lawsuits hang in the balance. The Justice Department argues not just that the terminations were done legally, but also that the law creating the program bars judges from even reviewing any part of the government's decision-making process. Indeed, Congress barred judicial review in sweeping terms, the department's lawyers wrote in a filing. The court should respect Congress's choice to leave quintessential executive branch decisions to the executive branch. Lawyers for the immigrants contend that the Congress does not prevent courts from evaluating whether the government followed the required procedures for making its determination. Otherwise, lawyers for the Haitians wrote in a filing in April, the administration could rule a country in or out based on a flip of a coin or the secretary's preference for a particular flavor of ice cream. The challengers say they can show Noam didn't adequately consult with the State Department about the conditions in Syria and Haiti, and instead manufactured reasons to reach a predetermined outcome. What you have in the situation now is really stark incongruities between what the Department of Homeland Security is saying and what the State Department is saying about these countries, said Alahan Arlaroumathan, the lawyer who will be representing the Syrians before the justice. We think the statute requires them to actually find whether the country is safe to accept a return or not. A researcher at DHS complained in a 2025 email, since turned over to the courts, that she was being forced to make conclusions about the program that she believed were not supported by evidence. Racial discrimination. A separate question in the Haitians' lawsuit is whether the administration's termination of the program was racially motivated, a potential violation of constitutional protections against discrimination. The most damning evidence is President Trump's own words, his own actions, said Zahal Zoda, one of the lawyers representing the Haitian immigrants. For years, he has used violent and dehumanizing rhetoric against immigrants of color. In a speech in December in Pennsylvania, for example, Trump referred to Haiti as a hellhole. Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let's have a few from Denmark, Trump said, recounting how in 2018 he had complained about immigrants coming from shithole countries. Send us some nice people. Administration, Trump's words taken out of context. The Justice Department said Trump's comments are being taken out of context and were not connected to Noam's decision to end deportation protections for Haitians. None remotely justifies an inference that the Secretary was motivated by an discriminatory purpose, Solicitor General John Sauer wrote in a filing. Trump is counting on the justices to reject the discrimination charge as a majority did in 2018 when upholding his immigration travel ban against predominantly Muslim countries. And in 2020, the court blocked the Trump administration from ending protections for immigrants brought to the court illegally as children, but did so without finding the move was racially motivated. Immigration advocates say those situations were different. In those cases, you had these sort of general anti-Muslim or general anti-immigrant sentiments. These statements are about our clients specifically, Jeff Pelopi, one of the lawyers representing the Haitians, said on the podcast Lawfare Daily. It's not so easy to brush it off as the court has done in the past. Going to bed not knowing what tomorrow looks like. The dispute reached the court on preliminary question of whether the administration's decision to end protections should remain on hold while the challenge is being fully litigated. How the court decides that question will affect not just the immediate future of the Syrians and Haitians in the United States, but also how easy it will be for the Trump administration to effectively do away with the temporary protected status program. This really is about a war on the congressional statute, Arulam said. In the meantime, Adham said he and his wife go to bed each night not knowing what tomorrow looks like. A decision in the case is expected by the end of June or early July. Justices likely to allow search of phone data, yet they weigh other limits on police warrants. Supreme Court justices sounded likely to allow police to continue sifting through smartphone data to locate unidentified suspects in crimes, but explored out several options for setting limits on search warrants in such cases. The case April 27th focused on Okello Chatri, who was convicted of robbing a bank in Virginia in 2019 after police found him by searching for smartphones in the area where the robbery occurred. His lawyers say such a blanket search violated his Fourth Amendment right against an unreasonable search. Yet the Justice Department argued that the review of Google narrowed its location data from 500 million users to 3 before providing any names of suspects to police. Nobody said the police acted improperly in getting a warrant for the information within about 1 1/2 football fields of the bank for an hour of either side of the robbery, but the justices explored how they might set limits on future warrants. Justice Brent Kavanaugh said it would be difficult to dictate specific terms for warrants. He said guidelines could tell magistrate judges issuing the warrants to require reasonable suspicions for a set period of time and location. It strikes me that micromanaging that is going to be problematic, Kavanaugh said. The case is a landmark for the Supreme Court to review searches of phone data when the subject isn't known, which are called reverse searches. Both sides portrayed the implications of the decision as potentially very broad. Chatri's lawyer, Adam Unkowski, said police asked for Google location data 9,000 times in 2019, but phone owners aren't notified, so they don't know to complain. Allowing police to search location data from smartphones would open the door to sifting through email, photos, calendars too, he said. All of these arguments that the government is using to defend the earlier searches could have very broad implications, Unikowski said. Deputy Solicitor General Eric Feingen said blocking such searches would handicap police searching for murderers, kidnappers, and robbers. Feingen said Chatri was trying to expand the Fourth Amendment into an impregnable fortress around records of his public movements that he affirmatively consented to allow Google to create, maintain, and use. The justices sounded as if they aimed to narrow the scope of the decision to avoid such wide-ranging results. Chattree pleaded guilty to robbing Call Federal Credit Union at gunpoint on May 20th, 2019, and was sentenced to nearly 12 years in prison. Video showed Chattree walking into the bank in Midlothian, Virginia at 4:52 p.m. while talking on a cell phone. Police got a warrant demanding Google identify smartphones near the bank, which narrowed the suspects to 3. But the review also swept more than a dozen people who remained anonymous to the police who were in the church nearby. Chief Justice John Roberts noted that Chattree signed up for Google to track his location and could have turned off the service before robbing the bank. If you don't want the government to have your location history, you just flip that off, Roberts said. Just like if you don't want people to peer in your window, you can close your window or the shades. Justice Samuel Alito said Chattree signed up for the service and agreed to allow Google to share his information if police asked for it. I'm struggling to understand why we are hearing this case, other than the fact that at least 4 of us voted to take it, Alito said to laughter in the court. Google stopped storing location data on its servers in 2023, and the information is now stored on individual phones. But Justice Sonia Sotomayor said it would be helpful to map restrictions on such searches because of how intimate the information might be. People take their phones now everywhere, including, I suspect, some people to the bathroom, Sotomayor said. You really have no idea what information, what private information, because it'll follow you to a brothel. It'll follow you to a cannabis shop. You don't know in advance what it's going to disclose, she added. Gunman's manifesto echoes leftist rhetoric. This is on the opinion page. In the aftermath of the foiled assassination attempt on President Donald Trump at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, April 25th, the third in under 2 years, I have a lot of questions. Most Americans do. How many more times will we face headlines about another attempt on a Republican president's life? How many more times will the Secret Service have to move in split seconds to stop a gunman? Americans can feel gratitude for the Secret Service agents who neutralized the threat and still wonder how a teacher turned would-be assassin got that close to the president in the first place. The attack raises darker questions. What kind of political climate produces this level of hatred? What makes someone attempt an assassination in a room full of journalists, a setting where the act would be witnessed, filmed from every angle, and pushed across every news feed within an hour? Liberals versus conservatives. As a conservative who voted for Trump, I have watched 2 earlier attempts on his life and the murder of conservative icon Charlie Kirk. My reaction is simple. Political violence should be condemned. It has no place in this country. We are better than this. But is America better than this? There is still much we don't know about the gunman or the security failures that let him into the room. But some things are already clear. Political violence is not confined to one ideology. Still, in recent months, high-profile conservatives have been targeted for who they are and what they believe. Charlie Kirk was killed 7 months ago. His widow, Erica Kirk, was at the dinner Saturday night and was rushed out after the shots were fired. The alleged gunman, Cole Allen, left a manifesto. He wrote that he intended to work through Trump's administration officials from the highest ranking to the lowest, sparing only FBI Director Kash Patel because he was no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crime. The claims are false. They are also common liberal talking points that Democrats, former presidents, and mainstream media outlets use on a regular basis. 2 days before the dinner, late-night host Jimmy Kimmel joked on his show about First Lady Melania Trump had a glow of an expectant widow. Is America better than joking about a sitting president's death or his wife's imagined widowhood? Would the same joke have been told about Jill Biden? Would it have, or it would not have been? On X, former President Barack Obama put all joking aside and praised Secret Service agents, but he also suggested that the Americans didn't yet know the shooter's motives. Perhaps he hadn't seen the manifesto. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes past the hour. We're going to go into the money issue, the money section now. And we'll start with the 50 states. Alabama, Monroeville, Georgia Pacific, a paper products company that's based in Atlanta but operates paper mills throughout Alabama, has donated a total of $500,000 to 3 rural hospitals in the state: Monroe County Hospital in Monroeville, the D.W. McMillan Hospital in Brewtown, and the Atmore Community Hospital in Atmore. Alaska, Juneau. A new FBI report found that Alaskans reported a record $40 million in cybercrime losses last year, a 52% jump from the previous year, KTUU reported. Arizona, Phoenix. The Bells Elementary School District School Board voted April 21st to ask voters for permission to sell one of its properties amid a $3 million budget shortfall. Arkansas, Little Rock. Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin announced that the state has distributed $44.4 million in tobacco settlement funds for 2026, KARK reported. Colorado, Pueblo. Beginning the first day of May, the Colorado Department of Transportation is set to install new traffic signal backplates at 27 Pueblo County locations to improve driver safety as part of a nearly $400,000 project targeting Pueblo and El Paso counties. Connecticut, Chaplin. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner confirmed the human remains discovered in Chaplin on April 24th are those of a woman who has been missing since October, WTNH reported. Delaware, Newport. A recent survey by Munley Law, a personal injury law firm, ranked 3 first state commutes among the most anger-inducing in the United States. The I-95, I-295, I-495 interchange near Newport was revealed as the top angriest commute in Delaware. I-95 in Wilmington was the second angriest Delaware commute featured. The last small wonder commute to make an appearance on the list was Delaware Route 1. Wow. District of Columbia, Washington. The Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Board recently voted to move forward fully automating Red Line trains, a plan leaders say will boost safety and efficiency, but that Metro's largest union opposes over ride safety and job loss concerns, WUSA 9 reported. Florida, Tallahassee. The advice of artificial intelligence chatbots resulted in deadly consequences has landed in the spotlight again as the state launches a criminal probe into ChatGPT's role in the Florida State University shooting that left 2 dead last year. Georgia, Pooler. In an effort to preserve the dwindling green space in the city of Pooler, 35 acres of wetlands and woodlands have been purchased using the Pooler Tree Fund, the city announced. Hawaii, Honolulu. FEMA has approved approved $4.6 million in federal funding to help Hawaii strengthen its natural disaster resilience as part of a broader $137 million hazard mitigation grant program supporting at least 50 projects nationwide, Hawaii News Now reported. Idaho, Napa. The city of Napa outlined a series of infrastructure projects to improve safety and connectivity in historic North Nampa, KTVB7 reported. Illinois, Springfield. A millionaire tax proposal floated in the Illinois House failed to gain enough traction, making it increasingly unlikely that voters will be asked to approve the measure in November. Indiana, Indianapolis. State audits of 5 attendant care providers in Indiana found $2 million in improper payments they extracted from the state coffers during a 3-year period. The same period when an explosion in costs for this program contributed to a $1 billion Medicaid budget shortfall that prompted a slew of policy changes. Iowa, Urbandale. The Iowa Board of Regents voted in favor of a 3% tuition hike for all in-state residents at Iowa State University, the University of Iowa, and the University of Northern Iowa. Kansas, Topeka. Topeka is facing a federal lawsuit filed by an employee who has worked for the city for more than 21 years. Jamel Walker, a black male employee at the water department, filed a racial discrimination lawsuit for more than $300,000. Kentucky, Frankfort. A new lawsuit alleges that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is failing to protect salamander mussels, a small but mighty freshwater species whose population in Kentucky streams are threatened by pollution and habitat loss. Louisiana, Baton Rouge. The Louisiana Department of Health has confirmed the first case of measles in the state for 2026. The case involves a pediatric patient in southeast Louisiana's Region 1, which includes Jefferson, Orleans, Plaquemines, and St. Bernard's parishes. Maine, Augusta. A new substance use disorder treatment center at the Togus VA Medical Center in Augusta will be accepting patients May 4th, giving Maine veterans in-state access to residential care aimed at reducing suicide risk and improving recovery outcomes, News Center Maine reports. Maryland, Ocean City. A task force tackling beach regulations will be implemented in the popular resort town destination of Ocean City this summer. The task force will be comprised of 6 members who patrol the town's shoreline, enforce beach regulations, and attend to non-emergency concerns previously addressed by the Ocean City Beach Patrol. The beach enforcement pilot was approved for just 1 year. Massachusetts, Arlington. The death of another bald eagle in March in Arlington has sparked an outcry from wildlife advocates, as well as state and local officials who want to see a statewide ban on second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides used to exterminate rodents. Michigan, East Lansing. For decades, the clock striking noon at IM West on Michigan State University's campus meant sounds of basketballs dribbling and tennis shoes squeaking on the floor of an upstairs gymnasium. But on April 24th, the few dozen people played their last game at the center after nearly 70 years. IM's West doors have been closed. Minnesota, Mounds View. The Mound View Public School District, which won its 14th consecutive Best Communities for Music Education Award, will cut some music instruction at its middle schools, beginning at Highview Middle School this fall, KRE 11 reported. Mississippi, Meriden. Technology company Cordarrelle LLC has announced plans to become a major tenant at the Compass Data Centers campus in Meridian. Missouri, Springfield. The team at Missouri State University has investigated reports of bias, such as graffiti containing swastikas, has disbanded. The bias review team was established in spring 2016, but was recently the subject of a lawsuit filed on April 21st. Montana, Missoula. Montana officials have issued new fish consumption advisories after forever chemicals were detected in fish tissue at multiple sites, including the Clark Fork River, based on recent samplings by state agencies, Missoula Current reported. Nebraska, Lincoln. The University of Nebraska Board of Regents approved a $15.9 million renovation of Morrell Hall's second floor, including Elephant Hall, marking the museum's largest upgrade in its 99-year history, with construction set for 27 through 29. Nevada, Washoe County. 2 cases of smallpox, of Mpox, have been reported in Washoe County, the first in northern Nevada since October 2022. Northern Nevada Public Health says the risk to the public remains low, and that is for Mpox. New Hampshire, Concord. President Donald Trump's approval rating continues to fall in New Hampshire, as the latest poll from the University of New Hampshire Survey Center reveals some of his numbers hitting record lows. The poll found that just 39% approve of Trump's handling of his job as president, while 60% disapprove. New Jersey, East Rutherford. The American Dream Mega Mall says it plans to open a 3,000-seat performing arts center this spring in time for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. American Dream executives said that the new venue, called the Dream Live Performing Arts Center, will be able to host cultural programming, comedy, theater, and live concerts. New Mexico, Santa Fe. Authorities in New Mexico are trying to determine how many local women and girls were abused by the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein at his isolated Zorro Ranch compound. Several individuals have said they were flown to the ranch and abused by Epstein and his associates. To date, only one, former Santa Fe massage therapist Rachel Benavidez, was known to be from New Mexico. New York, Albany. New York is one of the most gambling-addicted states, a Wallet Hub study found. New York was ranked the number 13 most gambling-addicted state. Whew. Okay. North Carolina, Durham. AbbVie will invest $1.4 billion to build a manufacturing campus in North Carolina, the drug maker said, marking its biggest investment to date in a single site. The campus will serve as AbbVie's main U.S. hub for injectable drug manufacturing, supplying medicines domestically and abroad, and as the company expands production capacity in the country. North Dakota, Bismarck. The State Department of Transportation is traveling to 4 tribal nations to issue free non-driver ID cards to residents 18 and older to help ensure that they can vote in the upcoming election, KXNET reported. Ohio, Columbus. Columbus City Schools and the Columbus Education Association have reached a comprehensive conceptual agreement on pay and other issues for the next 2 years, the teachers union said. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Oklahoma City. Just before April comes to a close, Oklahoma has already recorded 49 tornadoes this year. For comparison, 2026 had recorded the second most tornadoes in Oklahoma in the last 5 years, and the fourth most since 2000, only halfway through the peak tornado season, according to the National Weather Service data. Oregon, Salem. The family of a man who died in a car crash on a rural road in 2023 filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, alleging a park ranger was negligent in failing to prevent a drunken driver from leaving a state recreational area leading up to the incident. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. A U.S. judge paused his decision, forcing the University of Pennsylvania to provide a federal civil rights agency with information on Jewish students, faculty, and campus groups as part of an investigation into allegations of anti-Semitism. Rhode Island, Exeter. A long-awaited residential treatment center for teen girls is expected to open this fall in Exeter, with Family Service of Rhode Island running the educational and clinical programming. South Carolina, Anderson County. Electrolux will temporarily close its Anderson County plant, resulting in the layoffs of more than 1,000 workers who will be invited back to the facility once it reopens in 2027. According to Electrolux, layoffs are expected to take place in late July 2026, with laundry manufacturing production expected to commence in the first half of 2027. South Dakota, my tongue's tied. South Dakota, Sioux Falls. Avera Health received a record $35 million gift from national philanthropist B. Thomas Golisano, renaming its Sioux Falls Children's Hospital the Avera Golisano Children's Hospital, part of Avera's largest expansion of women's and children's services. Tennessee, Santa Fe. Santa Fe Unit School has received the Ann Dallas Dudley Golden Level Award for the third consecutive year for registering 100% of its eligible students to vote. Texas, Corpus Christi. An independent study found toxic metals from the water discharge from a Tesla lithium refinery making their way into the waterway near Corpus Christi. Utah, San Juan County. Utah State University opened its first campus on tribal land in the debut of a new 10,000 square foot Monument Valley Education building designed to serve students and community members of the Navajo Nation, KSL reported. Vermont, Crittenden County. The state will not pursue charges brought by police and state troopers against 6 people at the March 11th immigration raid in South Burlington. Chittenden County State Attorney Sarah George said she considered multiple perspectives before sending 3 cases from Burlington Police to the Burlington Community Justice Center and declined to prosecute 3 others brought by Vermont State Police. Virginia, Hopewell. Police launched a search for a man reported missing 15 years ago. According to a police statement, a search was conducted on the Vulcan Materials Company property in Prince George County. The search area was not the spot where Ivan Terry II's truck was found abandoned. The search area was near the spot where Ivan Terry Terry II's truck was found abandoned on June 26, 2011, and was also near what had been described as one of Terry's favorite fishing spots. Washington, Seattle. Transportation officials plan to turn the area around Lumen Field and Pioneer Square into a temporary pedestrian zone on 6 FIFA World Cup match days, KOMO News reported. West Virginia, Glenville. Governor Patrick Morrisey recently visited Gilmer County to celebrate a $5 million legislative grant for Glenville State University, completing funding for the Morris Family Health and Fitness Complex, WDTV reported. Wisconsin, Milwaukee. The Hop, Milwaukee's downtown streetcar, logged its lowest winter passenger numbers since winter 2021-22. Between November of 2025 and February of 2026, the Hop saw about 118,000 riders, according to the latest ridership data. That's down from nearly 135,000 riders in the same period during the winter of 24-25. It also marks the first time since the winter of 21-22 that ridership numbers during that time has fallen below 130,000. Wyoming, Powell. Northwest College, aiming to reverse a recent enrollment dip, will cover next year's approved tuition increase for all new and continuing degree-seeking students in 2026-27, instead of passing the cost on to them, Powell Tribune reported. Okay, and the highlight state for today is California. Redding. Sacramento River fish swimming through Redding will have more places to rest, eat, and hide from predators starting this spring. Conservationists announced they'll build rockwad homes, tree and rock structures for juvenile salmon and trout to live until they migrate out of Shasta County. Rockwads initiate debris clusters that once collected in the river. That debris was a refuge to nurture young fish at the start of the life cycle, said engineer Josh Watkins, a manager of the City of Redding Water Utility. Replicating those habitats will ensure salmon and trout populations have a place to grow and thrive. High spring temperatures can affect your EV's driving range. Sky-high gas prices may have millions of American drivers considering electric vehicles, but there are a few drawbacks potential buyers should know about. One of the most challenging aspects of electric vehicle ownership is low driving range compared with many popular gas and hybrid cars. Today, some hybrid cars are capable of traveling more than 600 miles before needing to refuel, while 300 miles of driving range is considered high for EVs by modern standards. Another reason electric vehicle ownership can be challenging is driving range is also affected by extreme temperatures, high driving speeds, and climate control setting. Here's what car buyers should know about EV driving range before driving off in one this spring. Do spring temperatures lower electric vehicle driving range? Temperatures across the United States can creep up to the 80s and 90s in some states, according to the Weather Channel. These temperatures are high enough to put additional strain on the lithium-ion batteries that power most popular electronic vehicles, including best-selling models like the Tesla Model Y electric SUV and the Tesla Model 3 electric car. EVs can lose about 5% of their total battery range in temperatures of 90 degrees Fahrenheit, according to research from data service site Recurrent Auto. A total range loss of 5% may not seem like much to some drivers, but if an EV has 240 miles of total driving range, that loss comes to 12 miles. It could be the difference between making it to the nearest EV charging station or being stranded. Electric vehicles can lose 17 to 18% of their total range in extreme temperatures above 100 degrees, which makes summer even more challenging for drivers. High temperatures may cause some battery range loss, but there are ways to conserve battery capacity even during spring and summer swelters. How to save battery range in high temperature this spring. There are several methods and pro drivers can use to conserve as much of their battery capacity as possible in high temperatures. How to stop high temperatures from draining an EV's battery. Cool down cabin with air conditioning while charging your vehicle. Park in shaded areas. Keep your battery at 20% to 80% of its full capacity for optimal performance. Take advantage of eco modes and drive at steady paces instead of bursts of acceleration. Practicing driving habits that can keep your cabin cool and your battery capacity at a predictable degradation rate can help you avoid running out of charge before finding a station. Should you get an electric vehicle in 2026? Electric vehicles may have different ownership quirks and requirements than gas cars, but there are plenty of reasons to buy an EV in 2026. A proper charging plan that includes where you're regularly charging and how much it costs on average can prepare you for EV ownership. If you are considering an electric vehicle in 2026, looking into a home charger is highly recommended. Having a home charger can eliminate some of the range anxiety surrounding EV ownership and ensure drivers have regular access to dependable and practical charging. Major automakers, from dynamic companies such as Tesla to the legacy brands as Toyota, are producing competitive EVs for the market. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026 on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Mary Gilmore. Have a wonderful day.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is David Frothingham. On the front page of today's sports section of the USA Today, the first headline reads, Billy Napier's new edge at JMU, the culture he never had at Florida. And there's a picture of Billy Napier, who was 22 and 23 in 4 seasons on the Florida Gators sideline. And this article is by Matt Hayes, college football columnist. He knows what you're thinking, and there's no reason to push back. He failed. There, happy now? Quote, we can't live in the past, Billy Napier tells USA Today Sports, but certainly I have to evaluate all the things I could have done better. So let's start there in the evaluation of why it didn't work at Florida and why it could, separately for Napier and Florida, in the near future. Because self-evaluation in its purest form eventually leads to self-actualization. That's where this thing was pointed 4 years ago, when Napier was one of the hottest college football coaching candidates and chose Florida over LSU. Now he's starting over deep in the Shenandoah Valley, off the Power 4 grid at James Madison, and no worse for the wear, despite 4 brutal seasons in Gainesville. But there's something beautifully normal about spring practice in Harrisonburg, Virginia, something downright peaceful. There's no drama. JMU has been humming along for quite a few years, thank you. Kurt Signetti got it rolling in the Football Bowl subdivision, and Bob Chesney took the program just 4 years removed from the football championship subdivision to the college football playoff. You know the CFP, right? The Holy Land Florida hasn't sniffed since its inception in 2014. The CFP followed the Bowl Championship Series national championship game, which Florida hasn't reached since 2008. Sure, it's a more difficult road in the SEC than any Group of 5 conference, but that's not the point. This is. 8 SEC teams have advanced to the playoff in the time Florida hasn't. 8 SEC teams have done enough within their programs to put players and coaches in position to win and advance in the toughest conference in college football. Florida, meanwhile, has run through 4 coaches since 2011, and all 4 have been fired. A school and program with maximum level of support in a sport that demands resources is 110 and 79 since 2011. So blame it all on 4 bad coaching hires: Will Muschamp, Jim McElwain, Dan Mullen, and Napier. And keep expecting different results with each new hire. Or maybe look deeper. Quote, this is the first time in my career where I've inherited a positive culture, confidence among players, and alignment top to bottom, Napier said. Look, Napier is the first to admit he made mistakes at Florida. His staff needed more SEC coaching and recruiting experience. He screwed the pooch on special teams for nearly 2 years. He didn't try hard enough to hire an offensive coordinator once his top choice, then Ole Miss offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr., said no before the start of Napier's 3rd season in Gainesville. But Florida didn't just stumble into 79 losses over the last 15 years. Didn't morph into a more talented version of Kentucky on bad coaching alone. You learn how to win, you prepare to win, and then you have the want and will to win. Somewhere along the way, after Urban Meyer's remarkable 6-year run ended with what he called a broken program, that simple formula was twisted in knots season after season, coach after coach. That's culture. That's why new Florida coach John Sumrall began his first few months with the very Herb-like move of eliminating Gators apparel from player workouts. They had to earn the logo, he said. Yeah, it's corny, but something has to change, an environment of entitlement that has dragged down a program for nearly 2 lost decades. Something has to shake the funk from a program that has lost 30 one-possession games since 2011. Meanwhile, we give you James Madison, 11-4 in one-possession games since the first season in FBS in 2022. Quote, the player-led culture here is critical, Napier said. Every kid we have is the underdog, a major chip on their shoulder, something to prove, overlooked and disrespected. It's the I told you so university. They come here on a mission to prove themselves, which, it can be easily argued, is the exact opposite at Florida. Coaches are the easy mark, and frankly they should be. They're making millions to procure and develop players and win games. There are no excuses. But the ground rules have changed with the advent of pay-for-play and free player movement. There's more responsibility and accountability on players, more weight for winning and losing. They're no longer protected by coaches or an idealistic amateur system. They're paid, and for many paid well, to play and earn their keep. The locker room, the culture, is just as much a part of their makeup as it is the coach. Entitled players aren't high achievers and rarely reach uncommon ground. More times than not, they're failures and or moving on to the next team, and now the next payday. So yeah, Napier made some mistakes at Florida. His game day acumen was a mess at times, and a majority of his teams lacked the focus and intentional will to win games they shouldn't, and more damaging, to lose games they should win. The exact opposite of what he had at Louisiana Lafayette, when he won 33 games in his final 3 seasons and had LSU and Florida throwing money at him. You don't just forget how to coach. There has to be more to the equation. Even when he had it all set up at Florida prior to the 2025 season, when the lines of scrimmage were among the best in the SEC and there were elite skill players on offense, his rising sophomore star quarterback couldn't stay healthy. His breakout freshman wideout played a third of the season. His star defensive lineman couldn't stay on the field. There's a little luck in this coaching deal, too. Quote, "I can't help but think we're all going to be in a better situation because of what we went through," he said. "Some of the best growth we experience is from the most adversity we go through," for Napier and Florida. The next headline on the front page of today's sports section reads, NBA Draft 2026, Early Entrants Dwindle Amid NIL, by Josh Peter. The NBA has announced 71 players have filed as early entry candidates for the draft in June, reportedly the smallest number of players in more than 2 decades. Yet, just 5 years ago, the NBA announced 363 players had filed as early entry candidates, reportedly the highest number in league history, and the numbers have dipped every year since then. There's little mystery behind the trend. The name, image, and likeness NIL era began in July 2021, allowing college athletes to cash in like never before. Clearly, it's made staying in school more appealing for players not guaranteed to be picked up high enough, or at all, during the 2-round NBA draft that determines a rookie's salary. The year's draft will be held June 23rd and 24th. Last year, Cooper Flagg, by virtue of getting picked number 1 overall in the draft, was guaranteed a 4-year deal worth more than $62 million, according to SpotTrack. Getting picked number 30, the last pick of the first round, guaranteed a 4-year deal worth $14 million, according to SpotTrack. By contrast, not all second-round picks are guaranteed contracts. Rasheer Fleming, the top second-round pick in 2025, was guaranteed about $6 million for a 4-year, $8.7 million contract, according to SpotTrack. Those who go undrafted, good luck. The case of Florida Gators star Thomas Ha. The Athletic helped spotlight the new dynamics when Thomas Ha, a rising senior forward at Florida who was considered a potential draft lottery pick, recently disclosed he will return for a 4th season with the Gators. Quote, "Ha is expected to be among the highest earners in college basketball next season, with sources familiar with the decision projecting that he's in line to make around what he'd earn in his first 2 NBA seasons combined if he'd been drafted in the top 20 in this year's draft," The Athletic reported. Other potential first-round draft picks who have decided to stay in school include Braylon Mullins, UConn, and Patrick Ngongba, II, Duke, according to Brian Kalbrowski of USA Today Sports. Meanwhile, the number of early entry candidates likely will shrink further before the NBA draft lottery, which is May 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. That's when the order of selection will be determined for the 14 teams that qualified for the lottery. In its release, April 27th, the NBA explains the process if a player wants to withdraw his name. Under NCAA rules, in order to retain college basketball eligibility, college players who have entered the 2026 NBA draft must withdraw by May 27th. Players who have applied for early entry have the right to withdraw their names from consideration for the draft by notifying the NBA of their decision in writing no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Time on June 13th. That could include Morez Johnson Jr., Michigan, Ebuka Okori, Stanford, and Malik Thomas, Arkansas, according to Kalbrowski. Elijah Arenas likely to return to Southern Cal despite being on early entry list. Elijah Arenas, the son of retired NBA All-Star Gilbert Arenas, will return for his sophomore season at Southern Cal, the Los Angeles Times has reported. He was a five-star high school recruit who seemed likely to opt for the NBA draft after one season with the Trojans, and his name appears on early entry college list the NBA released. In April 2025, Arena was placed in an induced coma after a car crash, and the accident resulted in a slow start to his freshman season. 2026 NBA Draft Early Entry College Players. Non-international players from colleges who have applied for early entry into the 2026 NBA Draft with player name, school, height, and class. Matt Abel, NC State, 6'6", freshman. Darius Acuff Jr., Arkansas, 6'3", freshman. Amari Allen, Alabama, 6'8", freshman. Nate Ament, Tennessee, 6'10", freshman. Christian Anderson Jr., Texas Tech, 6'3", sophomore. Elijah Arenas, Southern Cal, 6'6", freshman. Flory Bidunga, Kansas, 6'10", sophomore. Finley Bizjack, Butler, 6'4", junior. John Blackwell, Wisconsin, 6'4", junior. Shane Blakeney, Drexel, 6'5", junior. Anton Bonk, Charlotte, 7'2", junior. Cameron Boozer, Duke, 6'9", freshman. Mikel Brown Jr., Louisville, 6'5", freshman. Rowan Brumbaugh, Tulane, 6'4", junior. Braden Burries, Arizona, 6'4", freshman. Elliot Cadeau, Michigan, 6'1", junior. Cameron Carr, Baylor, 6'5", sophomore. Chris Sinak Jr., Houston, 6'11", freshman. Ruben Chinyelu, Florida, 6'10", junior. Jacob Kofi, USC, 6'10", sophomore. Cruz Davis, Hofstra, 6'3", junior. Kennard Davis Jr., BYU, 6'6", junior. Keanu Dawes, Utah, 6'9", junior. AJ Dibansa, BYU, 6'9", freshman. Gabe Dines, Southern Cal, 7'5", junior. Ian Elmer, Miami of Ohio, 6'6", junior. Isaiah Evans, Duke, 6'6", sophomore. Jeremy Fears, junior, Michigan State, 6'2", sophomore. Kingston Flemings, Houston, 6'4", freshman. Colby Garland, San Jose State, 6'0", junior. NBA Draft Early Entry International Players. International players who have applied for early entry into the 2026 NBA Draft with their player name, team, country of team in parentheses, and date of birth. Mohamed Amini, Nancy, France, 6'7", 2005. Pavle Bako, Mega, Serbia, 7'0", 2007. Basala Bagayoko, Bilbao, Spain, 6'10", 2006. Francesco Ferrari, Vitas Bologna, Italy, 6'9", 2005. Mark Owen Fodzo Dada, Nancy, France, 5'11", 2006. Zavvolod Ischenko, Lokomotiv, Russia, 6'3", 2005. Jack Cahill, Alba Berlin, Germany, 6'3", 2006. Sergio de la Rea, Valencia, Spain, 6'6", 2005. Kareem Lopez, New Zealand Breakers, Australia, 6'8", 2007. Alexandros Samadurov, Panathinaikos, Greece, 6'11", 2005. Luigi Swigo, Mega, Serbia, 7'2", 2007. When is the 2026 Draft and Lottery? The 2026 NBA Draft Lottery will be held in Chicago on May 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. The lottery will determine the order of selection for the 14 teams that have qualified for the so-called lottery picks. The 2026 NBA Draft will take place June 23rd, 24th in New York at the Barclays Center, home of the Brooklyn Nets. The first round will be held June 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, ABC and ESPN. The second round will be June 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. The next headline on today's front page of the sports section reads, Texas Tech's CFP hopes take hit with Sorsby saga by Paul Meyerberg. Texas Tech can still win the Big 12 and reach the college football playoff, CFP, without quarterback transfer Brendan Sorsby, whose availability this season is in doubt amid an NCAA investigation into a report of thousands of bets the senior placed on an online app, including on games involving Indiana when he was a freshman reserve for the Hoosiers. The Red Raiders did just that last season, rolling through the conference with just one loss despite missing former starting quarterback Baron Morton for all or parts of 3 games. But Sorsby was acquired from Cincinnati to help Tech reach the next level after being bullied by Oregon in last season's playoff quarterfinals at the Orange Bowl. Any extended absence dramatically weakens the Red Raiders' chances of being more than the best team in what could be the weakest conference in the Power Four. Sorsby will be out indefinitely after checking himself into a treatment program for gambling addiction, according to an ESPN report. His availability for this season may come down to how the NCAA interprets guidelines that went into place in 2023 and raise the possibility of a permanent loss of eligibility for student athletes who wager on their own games or on other sports at their own schools. Texas Tech is already short sophomore backup Will Hammond, who tore his ACL last season and is expected to be out until the start of league play, Coach Joey McGuire said earlier this month. Hammond was a key piece behind last year's conference championship, starting twice in place of Morton and throwing for 7 touchdowns against 3 interceptions. Sorsby developed into a top-level NFL draft prospect during the 2025 season, and that saw him throw for 2,800 yards and run for another 580 yards with 36 total touchdowns. With Sorsby facing the possibility of a season-long suspension or permanent loss of eligibility, and Hammond expected to be sidelined through most of September, the Red Raiders will lean on one of a handful of mostly young and unproven options. The one exception is junior Kirk Francis, who transferred from Tulsa this offseason after starting 10 games for the Golden Hurricane and throwing for 3,045 yards and 18 touchdowns. A former walk-on, Francis has enough experience to separate himself from true freshmen Stephen Cannon and redshirt freshman Lloyd Jones III and Holden Phillips. Francis may give the Red Raiders enough to get through non-conference games against Abilene Christian and Oregon State, but the season kicks into high gear with the conference opener at home against Houston on September 19th, with a loss to the up-and-coming Cougars potentially serving as the tiebreaker that keeps the Red Raiders out of the Big 12 championship game. By that point, Hammond might be back at enough strength to slide back into the starting lineup. Should the Red Raiders get past Houston and then gather steam against Sam Houston State and Colorado, this big money roster is talented enough once again out-talent the rest of the Big 12 and book an automatic playoff berth, potentially as one of the top 4 seeds. But Sorsby wasn't acquired to get Tech into the playoff. He was brought to Lubbock to get the Red Raiders over the hump and deeper into the bracket, if not all the way to the national championship game. His potential unavailability alters the landscape for Tech, the Big 12, and the entire Power 4. On page 3C of today's sports section, the headline reads, Ailing T-Wolves face historic playoff exit by Lorenzo Reyes. The Minnesota Timberwolves raced out to a 3-1 Western Conference Series lead, but it might have cost them everything. Yes, Game 5 on April 27th, when the Denver Nuggets outpaced Minnesota 125-113 in the first round of the NBA playoffs, was just one game. But it also serves as an indicator of just how much Minnesota is missing without Anthony Edwards and Dante Vincenzo. Denver outscored Minnesota by a margin of 37-24 in a third-quarter avalanche as the Nuggets were trying to become the 14th team in NBA history to win a playoff series after trailing 3-1. All of this prompts one question. Can the Timberwolves make a run without Edwards and DiVincenzo? Can they even get out of this round? The Nuggets are now playing with significantly more confidence and momentum than they did earlier in the series. Denver's bench has scored just 16 points in the crushing Game 4 loss. On April 27th, the reserves scored 27. Cameron Johnson and Spencer Jones, the pair of key Denver forwards, combined to drop 38 points in the Game 5 just 2 nights after they scored just 9. The Nuggets harassed Minnesota's ball handlers, forcing them into 25 turnovers, which was 3 more than the Minnesota's combined total in Games 3 and 4. But more than anything, the Timberwolves played tight and pressed, seemingly hyper-aware of the players they were missing. Quote, I thought we started the game wanting to make all of the home run plays, instead of wanting to make the plays that help us get into the ball game and make the rhythm plays, Timberwolves coach Chris Finch said. This is where Edwards' absence hurts the Timberwolves. He's a stabilizing presence and one of the dynamic scoring threats in the NBA. He averaged 28.8 points per game during the regular season, which ranked 3rd in the league. He can handle the ball, his shooting range helps space the floor, and he's preferred option in the clutch. And while backup guard Ayo Dosunmu emerged as a breakout player in Game 4 with his historic 43-point masterpiece, it's clear the Timberwolves won't be able to count on that kind of production every night from here on out. Dosunmu scored 18 points in a solid performance, and the Timberwolves did shrink a 27-point deficit to 10 midway through the fourth quarter. But that run came when Denver eased its pressure and intensity. So what's the path forward for Minnesota? For one, the Timberwolves should hope that Edwards heals quickly, because if they get past the Nuggets, their likely opponent in the second round would be the number 2 San Antonio Spurs, who are a legitimate threat to win the West. But practically speaking, the Timberwolves will essentially need to play pristine defense like it did during its 3-game winning streak in the series, especially in the paint. In Games 2, 3, and 4, the Timberwolves limited Denver to an average of 38.7 points in the paint per game. In Game 5, that figure ballooned to 62. Timberwolves center Rudy Gobert was masterful against Nikola Jokic. Forward Jaden McDaniels irritated Jamal Murray, and Denver's other ball handlers more. More of that will be required. Because without Edwards, the short-handed Timberwolves are not only suddenly vulnerable, they might be marching toward a historic exit. Quote, I think we are all just trying to press and make plays a little bit too much, Timberwolves forward Julius Randle said after the game. The formula was still the same, so we don't have to change that. We'll be better next game. Next headline under the commentary banner reads, Miracle Finals run only one way, Nuggets won't blow it up, by Robert Zaglinski. There's an old saying about everyone having a plan until they get punched in the mouth. The implication is obvious. We don't know people's true mettle until they're challenged. Anyone can be happy and successful in times of harmony and peace. Only a few rise to the occasion when faced with genuine adversity they didn't expect. If it were easy, everyone would do it. When it comes to the Denver Nuggets, we're learning a lot about Nikola Jokic and friends amid a possible short-lived NBA playoff run. The Minnesota Timberwolves and Jaden McDaniels have punched them, so to speak, and they haven't stopped punching them. Rather than stand up, dust themselves off, and throw some hooks back in return, the Nuggets have responded by rolling over and curling into a fetal position. As a result, we are reaching a point where the Nuggets' current score seems to have an imminent expiration date, like a turning sour carton of milk. It'd be one thing if the Nuggets had looked competitive up until this point. You could more readily excuse losing a hard-fought series to your biggest rival, with the tired make-or-miss league cliche holding up as it should. It happens, you know. But the Nuggets didn't fall down 3-2 to the Timberwolves because of bad luck in contested games. On both ends of the floor, they're getting flat out punked in a manner that feels like a 5-alarm fire. So far, this is the worst playoff series Jokic has ever played, and he's not getting any help. The Nuggets look slow, old, lifeless, and quite frankly, a little scared, even if head coach David Adelman takes great exception to that line of thinking. Denver has never lost in the first round of the playoffs in a season with both a healthy Jokic and Jamal Murray. If the Nuggets don't come back and win this series in a decisive fashion against a Timberwolves team that will likely be without its starting backcourt for the rest of the way, that will have said everything about having needed to say anything at all. Barring an NBA Finals run that feels miraculous in this very moment, change at the near base of the Rocky Mountains would be inevitable. You could talk me into any outcome this summer. Well, outside of trading Jokic, who reportedly appears content to remain in Denver for the rest of his career. If I know one thing about the Kroenke ownership family, they're not going to throw away a Serbian cash cow that makes them so much money unless he wants them to. However, they also won't let him waste away for the rest of his NBA playing days. That's why every other seat on this rapidly sinking Nugget ship could be shuffled around. Fire Edelman? Sure. Jettison Murray for peak trade value after career? Potential All-NBA campaign? Yes. Finding ways to offload the now often injured Aaron Gordon, a disappointing Christian Braun and Cam Johnson, and or letting the promising Peyton Watson walk in free agency? Absolutely. When NBA franchises peter out of the playoffs, as it sure seems the Nuggets might, everything is on the table. On the one hand, I'm shocked the Nuggets have reached this point. Denver entered the season as one of the league's supposed top championship contenders. This after they had sprinted into the postseason on an impressive 12-game winning streak, the longest of the Jokic era. For them to look so flat and hopeless is now galling. On the other hand, most championship-caliber cores in the NBA don't get to control their fate. Title windows open and slam shut in this league without warning almost every single time. Not knowing you're in the so-called good old days when they're happening to you in real time is the very nature of the business. Appreciate those days while you can because they don't last forever. A tumultuous summer looks like it's on the horizon for the Nuggets, but Jokic is still only 31. Outside of a freak bone bruise injury suffered earlier this season, he's proved to be pretty durable throughout his career. So, with the right moves, they might not yet be done competing for the championships with him. But right now, it's hard to argue that anyone in close proximity to the legendary Point Center will be along for that ride. The next headline on this page of the sports section reads, "In Close Race, Flag Wins Rookie Award" by James H. Williams. Dallas Mavericks forward Cooper Flagg was named NBA Rookie of the Year for the 2025-26 season on April 27th. Flagg finished ahead of the Charlotte Hornets' Con Nipple in a close voting race for the award. Flagg earned 56 first-place votes and totaled 412 points, while Nipple had 44 first-place votes and 386 total points. The 26-point gap between them is the second smallest gap between the top two finishers since the current voting format began in 2002-2003, behind only a 15-point gap in 21-22 when Scotty Barnes edged Evan Mobley for the award. The Philadelphia 76ers' VJ Edgecombe finished third with 96 total points and one second-place vote. Flagg joined two NBA icons by winning Rookie of the Year. He became the second youngest winner, 19 years, 112 days as of April 12th, the final day of the regular season, behind only LeBron James, 19 years, 106 days in 2003-2004, and he joined Michael Jordan as the only rookies to lead their team in total points, 1,473, rebounds, 466, assists, 316, and steals, 84, since steals were first recorded in 1973-74. "This is truly a great honor," Flagg said. "I'm grateful to receive this award and thankful to everyone in the Dallas Mavericks organization who believed in me from day one. None of this happens without my teammates, coaches, and the people around me pushing me every day. I came here to compete and help this team win. This is just one step forward in what we're building. Flagg was the first overall selection by the Mavericks in the 2025 NBA draft. He ranked 24th in points per game across the league. He had to show versatility early in the season, playing point guard after eventually moving to forward after Anthony Davis was traded. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Flagg stats. Flagg finished out the regular season averaging 21 points, leading all rookies, 6.7 rebounds, fourth among rookies, and 4.5 assists per game, second among rookies, in 70 games played. He shot 46.8% from the field and 29.5% from the three-point line. He scored a career-high 51 points on April 3rd against the Orlando Magic, becoming the youngest player in the league's history to score 50-plus in a game at 19 years, 103 days old. Flagg was also the first rookie to have 4 or more games with at least 40 points since Allen Iverson in 1996-97. The first headline on page 4 of today's sports section reads, Steelers place unrestricted tender tag on Rodgers by Jacob Kamenker. The Pittsburgh Steelers are making a rare move as they look to bring back quarterback Aaron Rodgers for a second season with the team. The Steelers are placing an unrestricted free agent tender on Rodgers, ESPN's Adam Schefter reports. The unrestricted free agent tender allows Rodgers to negotiate with other NFL teams if he so desires. However, the Steelers will reserve the right to match any offer sheet he could sign as a condition of the tender. Pittsburgh would retain exclusive negotiating rights with the quarterback if he doesn't sign an offer sheet with another team before July 22nd or the first day of NFL training camp, whichever comes first. If Rodgers agrees to sign the tender with the Steelers, he would receive a 10% raise off his salary from 2025, which would pay him about $15 million for the 2026 season. The NFL explained the unique situation surrounding Rodgers to its teams in a note that read in part, if Rodgers signs with a new club before July 22nd, he would be a potential compensatory free agent lost by the Steelers and a potential compensatory free agent gained by the new club if all other requirements are met under the compensatory draft system's rules. The latter point of the NFL's memo is notable. Typically, free agents no longer count toward the league's compensatory pick formula beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time the Monday following the draft. However, by tendering Rodgers, the Steelers will be able to recoup a compensatory selection for him should he sign with an organization. At the same time, tendering Rodgers will discourage other organizations from considering the 42-year-old as he would count against that club's compensatory pick formula. The next headline reads, National League powerhouse Phillies fire Thompson amid a 9-19 start, by Gabe Locks. Rob Thompson rescued a flailing Philadelphia Phillies team in 2022, taking over for fired Joe Girardi and leading the underachieving club to a World Series berth. Now, the Phillies are hoping getting rid of Thompson is the cure for what ails this year's disappointing club. The Phillies fired Thompson on April 28th after a 9-19 start that mired the $284 million roster in last place in the National League East. That caps a nearly 4-year run for Thompson, a span in which the club made the playoffs every season, yet backtracked from pennant winner to National League Championship Series losers to first-round exits in the last 2 seasons. Don Mattingly, the former Miami Marlins and Los Angeles Dodgers manager, was named the interim skipper for the remainder of the 2026 season. Thompson, 62, had a 355 270 record at the helm of the Phillies, taking over after Girardi was fired following a 22-29 start to the 2022 season. Yet after a National League Division Series exit at the hands of the champion Dodgers in 2025, team president Dave Dombrowski made few changes to a left-heavy lineup that has scuffled in this opening month of the season. And the pitching staff has been waylaid by poor performances from the since-released Taijuan Walker, 9.13 earned run average, Jesus Luzardo, 6.91, and $172 million man Aaron Nola, 6.03. Thompson is the second manager fired in 4 days, joining Boston's Alex Cora. Cora, who along with Dombrowski led the Red Sox to the 2018 World Series title, was thought to be a prime candidate to immediately replace Thompson. The Phillies offered the job to Cora before promoting Mattingly, but the former Red Sox manager declined the opportunity in order to spend more time with family, two officials with knowledge of the team's talks told USA Today's Sports' Bob Nightingale. The officials spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the process. Thompson began his Phillies career with 7 consecutive victories, and the club rallied for 87 wins and a wild card berth before toppling the St. Louis Cardinals, Atlanta Braves, and San Diego Padres in the National League playoffs to reach their first World Series since 2009. They held a 2-1 series lead over the Houston Astros, but lost the last 4 games. Still, the feeling that a potential dynasty was brewing was reinforced by a 90-win campaign and playoff conquests of the Marlins and Braves in 2023, as Citizens Bank Park became a playoff fortress for the club. Yet blowing a 3-2 lead to the Arizona Diamondbacks, losing both games at the bank in the 2023 NLCS, began an October regression the Phillies did not count on. They captured the National League East with 94 wins in 2024, but were upset by the New York Mets in the NLDS. They made it back-to-back titles in 2025, winning 96 games, but a tough draw on the defending champion Dodgers, losing a heartbreaking 4-game NLDS. All the while, the collection of superstars with 9-figure contracts went through various stages of regression. The club swallowed the final year of Nick Castellanos' $100 million deal after poor performance and insubordination in 2025. Nola was injured and largely ineffective after he was retained on a $172 million deal. Ace Zach Wheeler had surgery to repair thoracic outlet syndrome just 6 weeks before last year's playoffs. And beyond superstar sluggers Kyle Schwarber, 864, ops 9 homers, and Bryce Harper, 845 and 6, the lineup drops off dramatically. The Phillies ranked 29th in the majors with a 656 ops. Can Mattingly cure those ailments? If he can channel the 2022 version of Rob Thompson, perhaps. At the least, the Phillies determined the 2026 version of Thompson was no longer getting through. The next headline in today's sports section reads, Cincinnati told of QB's betting before season. And there's a picture of Brendan Sorsby, who was the starting quarterback for Cincinnati for the 2025 season. Article is by Matt Hayes. The Cincinnati Athletic Department was alerted in August that star quarterback Brendan Sorsby was gambling prior to the start of the 2025 season. 2 people with direct knowledge of the situation told USA Today Sports on April 27th. By knowing Sorsby was gambling and playing him anyway, Cincinnati could face NCAA scrutiny. Sorsby is under NCAA investigation after reportedly making thousands of online bets during his career, according to ESPN. The penalty for wagers exceeding $200 is eligibility loss, with higher wagers receiving more severe punishment. Sorsby appeared in 12 games for Cincinnati during the 2025 season. When contacted by USA Today Sports on April 27th, Senior Associate Athletic Director Zach Stipe released a statement saying, Cincinnati Athletics has no comments at this time. The Big 12, which includes Cincinnati, uses Prohibit, a compliance-driven app every student-athlete in the conference must download on their phone. The app notifies universities when athletes attempt to sign up for betting platforms or place prohibited wagers. Sorsby, the top player in this year's transfer portal, left for Big 12 rival Texas Tech at the end of the 2025 season. The NCAA recently informed Texas Tech of metadata it acquired that showed Sorsby's extensive and long-term betting on numerous sports, two people told USA Today Sports. The NCAA released a statement late in the afternoon, April 27th, saying it won't comment on pending or potential investigations, and that the association works with integrity monitoring services, state regulators, and other stakeholders to conduct appropriate due diligence whenever reports are received. Sorsby began placing bets in 2022 while playing for Indiana, two people told USA Today Sports. He bet on Indiana to win in 2022, but not in the only game he played during his freshman season. He since has moved to an inordinate number of bets, mostly small $1 bets, on various sports at various times. Sorsby has entered an addiction treatment facility, and there is no timetable on his return. Quote, "We love Brendan and support his decision to seek professional help," Texas Tech coach Joey McGuire said in a statement. "Taking this step requires courage, and our primary focus is on him as a person. Our program is behind Brendan as he prioritizes his health." Further complicating the matter is the pending litigation between Sorsby and Cincinnati from Sorsby's transfer to Texas Tech. Cincinnati is seeking a $1 million buyout it says Sorsby owes for transferring to another school, and Sorsby filed a motion April 27 to dismiss the lawsuit, saying that it's an unreasonable and disproportionate penalty. Sorsby was paid $875,000 to play for the Bearcats in 2025, and said in the most recent motion that Cincinnati is using the $1 million penalty to prevent future players from transferring, despite NCAA unlimited transfer rules. In October, the NCAA approved a proposal to allow student athletes and athletic department staff members to bet on professional sports. It would not have changed the NCAA prohibiting student athletes and athletic department staff members from making bets or sharing information with bettors on college sports. The initial ruling was adopted by Division I on October 8th and received approval from Divisions 2 and 3 on October 22nd. But the rule change was rescinded November 21st, the same day the NCAA Committee of Infractions issued 3 infractions related to sports betting to 3 former players and coaches at Temple. Heiser Miller, a former Temple guard, bet on college sports, professional sports, and even parlays involving the Owls. ESPN reported April 27th that Sorsby was being investigated, the timing of the report coming 2 days after the end of the NFL draft, where Sorsby was a projected first-round selection, but chose instead to leave Cincinnati and play for Texas Tech. Moving on to the section called Life in today's USA Today. Under the movies banner, Michael Won't Quiet Debate on Jackson's Life and Legacy by Melissa Ruggieri. The Michael Jackson portrayed in the new biopic Michael is a saintly musical genius. He's a precocious superstar, both fueled and terrified by the harsh criticisms of his megalomaniac father, Joseph. He's a visionary who possessed more talent than he knew what to do with sometimes, but managed to channel it into everlasting art in the forms of the albums Off the Wall, Bad, and the biggest-selling recording of all time, Thriller. That Michael, the eternal Peter Pan with the glistening voice and head-spinning dance moves, the animal lover who claimed his only friends were his pets, the philanthropist who comforted young burn victims at their bedside, is what Michael showcases. By ending the film circa 1987 during his then record-breaking Bad tour, producers ensured that viewers experience a haloed version of Jackson. Not even an epilogue card acknowledges the child sexual abuse charges brought against him in the ensuing years, nor is his 2009 death from an overdose of painkillers and sedatives. The film was reportedly set to address the sexual abuse allegations until attorneys for Jackson's estate discovered a clause in the legal settlement with Jordan Chandler, the then 13-year-old at the center of the 1993 lawsuit. The clause prevented any mention or depiction of him in any movie. According to Variety, much of its third act was devoted to the scandal, but that finale was scrapped, along with any mention of the child molestation accusations, according to sources close to the film. The outlet was also told that in the original script there was a scene of investigators searching Jackson's Neverland Ranch estate for evidence. The changes necessitated reshoots last year, which bumped the original release date of Michael from April 2025 to October 2025, and then this spring. Why we should return to the magic of Jackson. Will any of this matter to his devotees? Probably not. Considering they've sustained Jackson's status as the highest-earning dead celebrity on Forbes' annual ranking for 13 of the 16 years since he died at age 50. Jackson topped the Forbes 2025 list with $105 million in earnings, propelled by the success of Cirque du Soleil's 13-year and running Michael Jackson 1 show in Las Vegas, and Broadway's MJ the Musical, which has earned almost $300 million in ticket sales since debuting in 2022 and expanding to touring versions worldwide. Jackson historian and author of Michael Jackson, The Magic, The Madness, The Whole Story, J. Randy Taraborelli, is among those who agree with Michael ending without delving into the allegations that hovered over him since the first claims in 1993. Quote, I think it's a good idea for us to return to the magic of Michael Jackson, which was so obscured by all of the allegations, and unfairly so, Taraborelli says. I covered the 2005 molestation trial and sat there every day behind Michael for a year and a half. I felt like the whole thing was such a bogus case and had been so unfairly targeted. To portray that in a movie means you're hoping the public interprets it the way you want, and that's never going to happen, so why go there? The 1993 investigation yielded an out-of-court civil suit settlement for $23 million, while the 2005 criminal trial ended with Jackson acquitted of all 14 charges relating to child sexual abuse. Author and scholar Joe Vogel, who wrote Man in the Music, The Creative Life and Work of Michael Jackson, spent years researching the 2011 book, which he updated in 2019. To him, the Jackson accusations are just that. Quote, these allegations are fundamentally different than other high-profile cases. When you think of Diddy or Bill Cosby or Jeffrey Epstein, there was an avalanche of evidence. With Michael, it was way more complicated, Vogel says. He adds that in reporting for his book, he spoke to an assortment of people in Jackson's orbit, producers, security guards, nannies, family members, and without fail, everyone defended Michael, and that means something. Jackson's complicated history won't taint box office. Even before the abuse claims against Jackson, the singer was condemned in the tabloids and court of public opinion for being different because of his physical appearance, his peculiar lifestyle, such as sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber, and a gentleness that extended to animals and children. One aspect of Jackson's personality that is implied in Michael is that his stunted emotional growth, as a result, it is inferred of his father's abuse, is the rationale for his kinship with children. Taraborelli has known Jackson since they were teenagers and says it's frustrating when his reasoned defense of the superstar is dismissed by Jackson's detractors. It's another reason he agrees with keeping Michael focused on the legend. The public's interpretation was going to be hard to control. It would totally obscure the genius that was Michael Jackson, Taraborelli says. Neither Vogel nor Taraborelli believes that the shadow over Jackson's legacy will curtail an expected boffo box office. The film, which stars Jackson's nephew Jafar Jackson as the singer, earned $97 million domestically in its opening weekend, according to estimates from ComScore released on April 22nd. Worldwide, the movie launched with $217.4 million. In the immediate aftermath, of the 2019 HBO documentary Leaving Neverland, there were some question marks, but it was also the peak of cancel culture, Vogel says. Once people started to scrutinize the allegations more closely, they became more skeptical. Like, okay, this guy has been dead for a long time. I mean, there's still controversy surrounding Alfred Hitchcock, and people still watch his movies. Jackson critics will stand firm in their dismissal of his legacy, but Tara Borelli believes that revisiting a moment in time when Jackson and his music became a cultural phenomenon, as well as enlightening new generations to his otherworldliness as an entertainer, should be a reason for unity. We need this kind of movie more than ever right now, he says. The country is so damaged and we're in such disrepair. There is so much anger on both sides that any time you get something that can bring people together, that's a huge plus. And who better to give it to us than Michael Jackson? You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 50 minutes after the hour. The next headline in today's Life section, under the banner Movies, reads, Young Actor Speaks Volumes in I Swear by Patrick Ryan. Dateline is New York. The stars aligned at this year's British Academy Film Awards, where Michael B. Jordan, Leonardo DiCaprio, Timothée Chalamet, Ethan Hawke, and Jesse Plemons were competing for Best Actor. But the surprise winner was the guy with the fewest acting credits, Robert Aramayo, 33, who brings specificity and humor to I Swear in theaters, based on the true story of Tourette's syndrome activist John Davidson. Quote, I never in a million years thought that they were going to read my name out, Aramayo said on a recent morning. I didn't ever think my name would be considered amongst those names. I still can't really believe it. It was absolutely mental. There's a picture of Robert Aramayo, who won the BAFTA Awards in February for Best Actor and Rising Star. There's nuance in BAFTA's incident with John Davidson. The decade-spanning I Swear traces Davidson's troubled upbringing in a working-class Scottish town in the 1980s as he begins to experience inexplicable episodes of involuntary swearing and repetitive movements that rankle teachers, classmates, and his parents. He eventually is diagnosed with Tourette's, and with the help of a family friend, Maxine Peake, he learns how to manage his condition and find confidence in himself. Davidson, 54, became the subject of numerous documentaries, and in 2019 made headlines for unintentionally swearing at Queen Elizabeth II while receiving an award for his advocacy work. But Aramayo had no idea who Davidson was until he read filmmaker Kirk Jones' script for I Swear. I had a lot of reservations about playing John, Aramayo said, along with Tourette's. John is a man with many, many different things going on with him, struggling with OCD, ADHD, and severe anxiety, all common with people living with Tourette's. But the young actor's nerves were put at ease as he spent extensive time with Davidson before filming, and befriended the movie's more than 24 cast members living with Tourette's. Quote, those days were so beautiful because it really brought home that lots of people in that group had never met anybody else with Tourette's before, Aramayo says. They say if you meet one person with Tourette's, you've met one person with Tourette's. It's always very different with every individual, and people were so incredible about sharing their stories with me, end quote. I Swear was thrust into the spotlight at the BAFTAs in February when, because of a Tourette's tic, Davidson shouted racial slurs at the team behind Sinners, including stars Jordan and Delroy Lindo, as they presented on stage. Davidson excused himself from the ceremony and later issued an apology, although the BBC sparked controversy for failing to edit the slurs out of the broadcast until hours after the fact. Quote, there's nuance to the conversation, obviously, Aramayo says. In the movie, you see that tics have an impact on people. You've got to acknowledge that. At the time, coprolalia, the tic that John has, is not a reflection of a person's thoughts and feelings. It's involuntary. It's saying the worst thing imaginable in any given circumstance. Aramayo manifested his Game of Thrones role. Born and raised in Kingston upon Hull, England, Aramayo got his start acting in youth theater productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream and Bugsy Malone. Although he once considered pursuing a career in either marine biology or archaeology, he was too much of a class clown and often got in trouble for impersonating teachers in school. In 2011, he was accepted into the Juilliard School for Drama in New York. He still lives in Brooklyn and likes to spend his weekends strolling through Prospect Park or watching English football. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Leeds United fan. Throughout his decade-long career, Aramayo has worked with directors such as David Fincher, Mindhunter, Tom Ford, Nocturnal Animals, and Matthew Vaughn, The King's Man, and he's itching to one day be in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. The up-and-comer is perhaps best known for playing the young Eddard Stark in the last 2 seasons of HBO's Game of Thrones, as well as the half-elven ruler Elrond in Amazon series Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. When I was a kid, I remember watching Game of Thrones when it first came out, Aramayo says. I remember my dad saying to me, "Imagine if you were on something like this one day, Rob," and then telling me I was going to be in it. It was a really lovely moment. With his newfound recognition, his hope is simply that he'll get to continue acting, and more importantly, that the movie will raise awareness and promote education about Tourette's. Quote, "I would love for people to go home from the film and just Google, what is Tourette's, or who is John Davidson," Aramayo says. If it starts a conversation, that's amazing. Here's some celebrity birthdays for today. Singer Willie Nelson turns 93. Conductor Zubin Mehta, 90. Singer Dwayne Allen from the Oak Ridge Boys is 83. Singer Tommy James and the Shondells, turns 79. Director Philip Noyce, 76. Comedian actor Jerry Seinfeld turns 72. Actor Kate Mulgrew, 71. Actor Daniel Day-Lewis turns 69. Michelle Pfeiffer is 68. Eve Plum is 68. Singer Carney Wilson is 58. Actor Paul Edelstein is 57. Uma Thurman is 56. Rapper Master P is 56. Actor Darby Stanchfield is 55. Singer Erica Campbell is 54. Bassist Mike Hogan from the Cranberries is 53. Actor Tyler Labine is 48. Actor Megan Boone is 43. And actor Zotitel Gomez is 20. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been David Frothingham.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 8 of We Did OK Kid by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Following that, at 3 o'clock is Healthy Living, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of the Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,